Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Marvel I'm a Cartoonist. Chapter 51. A dull voice resounded throughout the building, "Ah! Abnormal." Early in the morning, Shumo, who was dazed, was awakened by the roaring roar of Master Hidong, and the sleepy double here was about to close. Quote. The heart of the language was wide, and the cold sweat broke out. Boom. Without further ado, teleport back 2 steps to close the bathroom door. The bungalows on the building are well decorated, but the overall layout is a bit lacking. The bathroom is in each room. After Shumo calmed down her heartbeat a little, he coughed dryly. Lorna, this is not for the bridge hole. Intermittently, Lorna sits on the toilet naked in an indescribable place. Her face is pale and hysterical, if she doesn't know it. The content of the speech thought it was preaching. Although these 2 colors are all over the face. Upon hearing Shumo's polite nonsense, he shouted angrily, there is only one dead change building, and the 2nd floor is shared. Health. Outside the door, Shumo, who had some guilty conscience, ran out of his mind. That was Lorna's white legs, and after unable to scream, breathing was not smooth, and then the color of the beautiful red language clearly expressed, and Lorna the color of the hair when using superpower. Alas, the white is so conspicuous that you can't even see it. Attitude, still quibbling. Believe in the teacher. Regarding Lorna's accusation, Shumo was a little embarrassed by Kaido. Lorna, it's like this, didn't I draw it too late last night? I drove out the new 4 manga chapters, and didn't see it. Shumo originally subconsciously went to Kaido. There was an earthquake last night for no reason, and I didn't sleep well. Quote. After a pause, he said, actually, I didn't see anything. Really, you can't stand Lorna anymore. Not only is her face flushed, but even. What kind of teacher would be so perverted? From donkeying, I really do everything. After hearing this, Shumo knew that he couldn't say anything clearly. He scratched his head depressed and moved quickly, and Ducky emphasized stiffly. Roll. It didn't take long for Lorna's heartbeat to calm down. At this moment, her ears stood up and she heard the footsteps from far and near, and her heart was beating wildly. She became angry and yelled frantically. Shumo, this dead pervert is back. What does he want to do? Don't want to use strong. Leave slowly and go to the bathroom downstairs. Unexpectedly, he is such a person. No matter how Lorna was thinking about it, if she said that she didn't lock the door because she had forgotten it before, Shumo came in with a misunderstanding. Do you think? Then it's really perverted now. Fortunately, it was Jolly's voice coming in from outside the door. It's me, Sister Lorna. I didn't hear it all, I was really seen. Jolly said with an excited 8 trigrams, her ears on the door, and her head secretly. It turns out that humans. What a deliberate breath, but looking down. No. Lorna's extremely calm words came out, making Gaily stunned and a little confused. Lorna looked up at the ceiling innocently, muttered to her, oh. Pretending to be away from the well, she floated back, shaking her ears. Lorna inside used her abilities to punish this abnormal teacher for a long time, and instead she twitched her mouth a few times, which was a little bit hidden inside, but the angle was changed and it was really unobstructed. Glittering teeth should be directly into the air, pulled out the steel bars in the wall and crossed them, and finally hung on the balcony and exposed to the sun. It's over, it's really over. I don't know why she is not the first. She didn't think about anything at the time, she was completely in the mentality of a little girl. What's the matter? Just skin, this is not her character at all. She should reply quietly outside the door, as if reading her mind, Sister Lorna, do you have feelings for Shumo? 3 days and 3 nights like an arrow of Langley. But she stabbed Lorna's heart fiercely, her hair floated up, and the dark green gradually replaced the dyed black hair. She said furiously, Gaily. At this moment downstairs, Jolly was angry and slowly stopped at Shumo who was about to buy breakfast. When he looked back, he saw Jolly's purple hair flashing by, and then the furious Lorna controlled the pots and pans. Chased the past. The female of the face followed behind. Oh, Shumo couldn't help shivering. A helicopter rolls its head, and it suddenly emits a golden light. Such power is the top of a tall building. A blonde and curly young man walked down from above, and there was an Asian, Danny, don't be impulsive. According to last night's news, Hell's Kitchen launched a shallow earthquake. New York, Danny Lander is finally back. Danny said angrily, clenched his fist and waited for you to jump in. I know, Colleen. Danny was not emboldened by him. The woman behind heard the words and reminded, come down. Let's find some help first. The righteous police in Hell's Kitchen are a good choice. This way, it will be more effective to deal with the starting hands. Now New York has been laid to the sky. Colleen and Danny left the apron. One left the building directly, and the other entered the chairman's office on the top floor of the building. Shumo took 3 breakfasts and walked slowly on the streets of Hell's Kitchen. The closer to the residence, the fewer pedestrians. He put the bag down gently, patrolled around, smiled and said, come out, don't hide it. Call. A black blade axe was thrown from a corner, and the posture of rapid rotation was full of wind. Then Shumo raised his hand like lightning, and directly grasped the position of the handle at an extremely tricky angle. The gangster. Sneer. Shumo is also drunk. Since he traveled to the Marvel Universe, no supervillain has troubled him. I saw several young white men in gangster standard suits, with weapons in their hands, 8-gate, rushing over menacingly. But this time the gangsters are not like the style in Frank Mansion. There is no nonsense at all. Shumo doesn't know what to say because of its fierce look. Since you are here to die, then go to die. Shumo has a cold face, leaning back slightly, swinging his axe as if throwing a shot, and letting go for an instant. Boom! The air suddenly exploded, and a circular shock waved through a dot and surged everywhere. ZZ. The axe spun with extreme speed in the next second, cutting the air and making a sharp sound, completely turning into a disc and flying straight out like a cannonball, and instantly came to the front of the gang. Pouch! The blood was gushing, the human head flew up, and the expression on his face was still that fierce, which was completely beyond the brain's response. The axe went around in a circle in midair like a boomerang and was caught by Shumo. He smiled and shook the axe blade with traces of blood stained on it. Dead. Is this dead? Several gangsters were stunned, and before they could react, their heads were cut off as soon as they appeared on the stage, like ice water falling from their heads, cold and biting. He's only one person, let's go together. One of them was more courageous and quickly steadied his emotions and rushed up, while the others also reacted and were about to rush forward. There was another, bang, the thug who called just now was hit directly in his stomach, and a stone dragged him backwards and flew out and plunged into the wall. The smashed gravel rolled down, and the blood fell from the pile of dust and rocks, flowing out. Another one died. Change, mutant, he is a monster. The 3 thugs were broken and fled in panic. They were very clever and ran in 3 directions. Shadow clone technique. Shadow clone technique. Shumo shook his head when he saw it. He didn't need Jayan at all, so he called 3 clones to catch up with him. The next moment, with Superman's speed, he caught the person in just a few seconds, and directly beat him on the spot. The 3 thugs only thought they were chasing him. Under the severe pain, it was not that all the hard bones were all out in order to save their lives. In the end, the clone killed the 3 directly. Just cut your hands, is this a colleague? As the 2 shadow clones, puffs, turned into white smoke and disappeared, the information Shumo received made him think a little. This group of thugs are from the Golden Underworld Empire, and the task is required to chop off the target's hands. This is a very strange task. Shumo can only be viewed from pure competition, which is not uncommon in the United States, just as Tony was not brought into the den of terrorists by his greedy uncle, and he has not come out yet. Interests are moving. The comics of Marvel Comics are now the hegemon of the comics market. It can be said that 70% of the profits are in the pocket, and other companies can only drink soup. And with the subsequent comics, 90% of the share can be embezzled, and the only thing that can be solved is the original and new type comics. Obviously, most comic companies are afraid of losing their money and dare not extend that foot, so some people are moved. Shumo said indifferently to the other clone, "Go and solve it completely." "Yes." The clone responded and left the street. Boss Jin Bin, this is a little bit of heart. A chubby white man flatly took out the check and put it on the table, while Edward on the side also smiled. Edward, Bane, rest assured, my people are gone. Jin Biao cheerfully smiled at the 2 sitting on the sofa, took it over calmly, and glanced at the smile on the face of the number above. Same as flowers. That's good. Alas, business is difficult now. What kind of shit this kid drew can be so popular? The three people laughed and talked freely, and Bane was even more satirizing Shumo's cartoons, but the three of them knew how bad they were. How could they meet today? Yeah, it looks just right. A voice suddenly sounded from the shadows, and the three of them heard their reputation, and the cold black shadow came out as a young man. He is Shumo. Edward's face changed drastically, and he exclaimed. Then, the cane burst out and Bane saw it, terrified and accused. What, Boss Jin Bin, what's the matter with you? Ask why no one stopped you. Shumo can come here. Jin ignored Bane's question, and rushed forward. His sturdy body like a mountain overwhelmed him without knowing it. His cane has an endless stream of attacks that swells and crackles. He has no nonsense, smoke, etc. As long as there is a little noise, his subordinates will soon rush into the lair, which explains everything. Either they are all dead, or they are all clones. Of course, they will not be attacked by the electric current. The shadow clone will disappear as long as it is attacked, so it is just a sudden pan. Flash ability, can launch lasers, spread high voltage current through the poisonous road, and then clenched fists, aiming at the abdomen close at hand and swinging a fist. Boom! Jin Binquan suddenly exploded. The unstoppable body was instantly penetrated by the huge force, and the entire abdomen was recessed, only to feel the internal organs bursting wildly, and then the terrifying force. Edward opened his mouth, watching this horrible scene. Dull sound. The huge bodies were like inflated balloons. The two shuddered and slumped directly to the ground. The air waves they saw with their own eyes pushed the broken pieces through the windows and blasted them out. Bane and Tay are the same as comics. Is Shumo still a human? At this time, layers of air waves started to reach the scene, and the eyes burst out. The remaining plasma was blown and beaten on the wall. How is it possible? How is it possible? When he arrived at Jin and was beaten with a punch, the companion rushed to the door with Edward's hysterical roar, only to feel the pain in time, and his consciousness gradually blurred. Surging around, Bane kneeled. Shumo's clone flashed a kick and exploded Edward's head, turned to look at Bane, and wrote lightly, "You are the only one." The chaotic footsteps are from far to near, and it's terrifying that Bane's eyes are struggling. I beg you, you can mention anything, and the company will give it to you. Bang. Quote. Boss. Jin and cried on the ground. At this time, there was a panic outside, and a heavy rush came up, but found that the bodyguard at the door directly hung the color, opened the door, and a bloody smell entered his nose. The desired color can directly become dim. The scene in front of him made his pupils shrink suddenly. Shumo's subordinates were stunned when they hurried to eat breakfast when they heard something movement, and then proceeded to eat. Get up. There is no response to Gale, who is sitting with him, but Min. The nervous Lorna looked a little surprised, always paying attention to Shumo's movements. Shumo, hurry up and let your Young Dao clone sit on her chair and come out. When it's time to paint, Jolly yelled with an air of expression on her face. New comics. Shumo flipped over this, puffed through. White smoke rose, 5 avatars appeared in place, and Jolly was not surprised when he pushed a picture. Lorna was coldly alone. She helped her draw while she moved a small bench and ate snacks happily while looking at Ishin's 3 uses. In addition to improving her spirit and ability, the important thing is that her salary will be increased. Phew. Eyes, you know that Giali does not have much patience to paint. Of course, Lorna can't be like Giali to make a clone of painting by acting like a baby. She is her job, but she is actually afraid that Shumo will quit painting. Now she is practicing like she, because now it seems that the doppelganger is much easier to use than her, and there is no need to pay, but it may be because of the abnormality in the morning. I was a little guilty about the things I considered when I killed Jin, and I haven't mentioned it now. Shumo didn't mention. How could Lorna take the initiative to leave? Infiltrate the building to escape the scope of the probe for assassination. Strangely speaking, Shumo really lived a slightly plain life without the gang's interruption. It is the influence of the gang leader who died, but his men did not die. The Frank building incident attracted the attention of S.H.I.E.L.D., so the clone was changed to a Flash, and everyone received the wind more or less, and all began to have their own abacus, and the underworld empire blinked. The effect is surprisingly good. Shumo does not know how to separate And Shield was stunned throughout the entire process. The street probe was still damaged and nothing was found. However, Jin Bin Dai Jin and its agents all over the world did not call the police at all in the 3-day-old man. Those of them were gangsters, and they fell apart. It is impossible to ask the police to find out who killed the boss, and it is never the best to find out. However, Jin Bin's death stubbornly caused the news to lag when the first gang tried their best to conceal it. In the information database of S.H.I.E.L.D., when Collison wanted to act and suspect that it was related to previous events, he would go on dates from time to increase the relationship. After a week without any disturbance, the intelligence capabilities of S.H.I.E.L.D. were not good. It is that the gangs are not paid much attention to, and the Black is a new issue of the comic magazine. And tonight is another night of his lottery. Just like that, when Shumo Tenten paddling and Gwen standing on the balcony, Shumo looked at the brightly lit New York night scene, feeling extremely happy. Calling out the system interface, the fan value has skyrocketed in just 1 week. The One Punch Man, Tokyo Ghoul, Attack on Giant, Naruto, Shinigami, and Terminator, and Duo, by Zian Mank on the Boy Jump. There are a total of 7 comics in La Dream. Among them, the fan value provided by the first 3 comics has gradually become scarce, and the base number will not increase so much. The fan value provided by the 4 new comics is astonishing, and the 7 books combined have reached more than 5.5 million this week. The fan value label is omitted even with Arabic numerals, and the abbreviated Chinese, 583,625 o'clock, is used instead. This is not the limit. Even if there are no new comics in the next week, the fan value will have to be doubled, because the next week has actually come to the next month. The time he traveled was not number 1. At the beginning of each month, the fan value will be re-provided, and the base number is as large as the number, and then the fan value that blows out will be credited to the account. Besides, a new comic will be released next week. Thinking of this, Shumo can no longer express his inner excitement in words. System, adjust the specifications, 1.5 million at a time, 1 million at a time, and then. Shumo said while thinking, secretly saying, 5.5 million is really amazing, you have to plan carefully. He has directly excluded a lottery of 200,000 points. A minimum of 300,000 is something, and in the first draw, the system said, Fragment is a low-level award, which means that high consumption of fan points will not draw fragments, that is, direct and complete skills. But this is not to say that 5 million at a time is good. After all, it is a lottery, not an exchange of equal value, and it is not a clear price tag for the product. Forehead protector was included in the last million draw. The jackpot is not 100%, and he can't bet all of it, and he will lose a bit if he loses a little. Shumo is well aware of the urinary nature of this game, his eyes are shining, and he is fierce and said, it was done before, and readjusted. The system panel is instantly cleared, waiting for a new command. He slowly said, 2 million at a time, 1.5 million at a time, and 1 million at a time. This is directly 4.5 million, a total of 5.5 million, and only 1 million is left after deduction. Shumo was a little bit tongue-in-cheek, this high consumption is really a loss. The remaining 700,000 yuan at a time, and 300,000 yuan at a time. As soon as the voice fell, the system interface directly adjusted the specifications. Please host to start the lottery, the order is from low consumption to high consumption. Start. The pitch-black turntable was spinning, and the pointer didn't know what it was pointing at. The first is the 300,000 lottery. Congratulations to host. Get Naruto's worn-out clothes, skill, Linksy paving the way. The beige clothes, with Uzumaki's red pattern on the back, looked a little worn out. Shumo took out the plastic bag and put it in. Now every time a lottery draws, plastic bags are prepared to hold some useless things. The second one made him shine. Paving the way for the spirit child. The air fighting technique from Shinigami gathers countless spirit children in the atmosphere under the feet, using this as a foothold and then extending the formation. Note: all worlds with souls have souls. This is just comparable to flight. Shumo raised his brows with joy. Although there are useless clothes for the 300,000 lottery, he can make money just by paving the way. And this is not a fragment, or that this is a basic skill at all. Without Shumo's reminder, a white light burst into his mind and a message emerged. Just do it as he wanted, just like instinct. Shumo just stepped on it gently, and the surrounding spirits seemed to be pulled and gathered under his feet. Shumo stepped on the floor half a meter high in midair as if walking on the ground. He walked a few steps forward, and the link sea that could not be seen by the naked eye scrambled to spread the slab, and it felt very solid. He dashed in the air, tried the S type, and then the B type road again, without any obstacles at all. After practicing for a while, the feeling of landing again is different. Continue. This time it is a 700,000 draw. Congratulations to the host, for obtaining Hebao Fragments X1, Jinmu Research Fragments X3, Saitama Fragments X2, Transformation Technique, and Crystal Ball. The automata detects the item that can be synthesized, and it is being synthesized. 2 beams of light flew out of the warehouse, and there were 2 lumps of meat faintly, and a stream of light was also shot from the turntable, colliding together, and then dazzling colorful flashes. A bean-sized ball appeared in front of Shumo's eyes, shaking himself as if he were alive. It looked much better than the fragmented state before, but Shumo didn't want to eat it. He doesn't want to eat human flesh, he hasn't finished eating the world's delicacies. The transformation technique was so obvious, Shumo put it on without saying a word, and after a poof, she became Lorna. Quote. After looking at the first 2 headlights, I suddenly had a bold idea. After Shumo lifted the transformation technique with a face full of excitement, he dragged the fragments into the warehouse, and he was taken aback by the message that the last crystal ball popped up. Crystal ball. From Naruto, used with the telescope technique, it is usually an ordinary crystal ball. The telescope technique, isn't it what 3rd Hokage uses for daily peeping? Shumo scratched his head and put it in the warehouse. It seemed a bit useful, depending on the scope. Whether to continue the lottery, the next amount is 1 million lottery. Yes. The turntable continued to rotate, and the pointers didn't know what they were pointing at, and it was completely dark. Shumo whispered secretly, "This looks like a good commercial fraud." Congratulations to host, get the Book of Sealing, Uzumaki Naruto Shard X1, Saitama Shard X2, Mikasa Shard X2, and an animal transformed into a biscuit. The turntable ejected a few white lights. Shumo still put the fragments into the warehouse first, layer by layer. Animals turned into biscuits. After eating animal pie, they will become the appearance of this kind of animal, and the duration is 5 minutes. Shumo looked at the black technology rabbit-shaped biscuit from Doraemon, shook his head and put it in the warehouse. This kind of biscuit doesn't actually turn into an animal, it's roughly in human form, and it's almost like an orc. There is no practical use, and it's a bit of a prank to be used. Shumo focused his attention on the last award, which alone is worth 1 million points. Sealed book. The book of ninjutsu written by Naruto in the past was sealed due to the high risk. With the Book of Seal, the collected ninjutsu fragments can be directly converted into skills. Multiple shadow clone fragments are detected and directly strengthened. After the enhancement is completed, it will be upgraded to the full version of multi-shadow clone. LV5 in the upper right corner of the shadow clone icon in the system interface disappears directly, and the afterimages of the 3 people in the pattern become crowded. Quote. Ah, the system has grasped the root of the grass, which means that it can't be learned directly. Shumo's expression on his face was full of joy, and he suddenly became angry. He was not happy. Shadow clone is no longer a fragment. In his opinion, it should be learned by 1 click. I also planned to learn directly from Flying Thor and 8 Inner Gates, but I didn't expect it to be an enhanced version of the converter. Yes, host, the Book of Seal is only an item, unless you have chakra you can learn by yourself. Transformation technique and shadow clone do not use chakra, they consume energy, and he doesn't have chakra at all. When Shumo turned black, he stuffed the sealed book into the warehouse. Although he couldn't learn it directly, the fragments can directly transform skills in the future, which is not a loss. Compared with the last 1 million lottery draw, the number is much smaller, and there are only a few fragments. It seems that the value of the same lottery draw will not be equal each time. Continue. 1.5 million lottery. Congratulations to the host, Skynet Fragment X1, Kurosaki Ichigo Fragment X3, Normal Virtual 1, Uzumaki Naruto Fragment X3, recovery flashlight, Ashura unicorn skill, tough fragment X2. Automatically detect the synthesizable item, synthesizing. The three Skynet fragments collided together, emitting a dazzling and distinctive black light, turning into a USB flash drive. The three Skynet fragments collided together, emitting a dazzling and distinctive black light, turning into a USB flash drive. Skynet. Super artificial intelligence, self-awareness, the internet is life. Shumo's face changed slightly, and he picked up the USB flash drive and looked at it. It looked the same as a normal USB flash drive, but in fact there was a big killer inside. An artificial intelligence that once destroyed the world. There is no rush to plug in the computer port for a while, put it on the table first, and focus on a flashlight. Recovered flashlight. It will be restored to its original state if it is exposed to the damaged industrial product, and it will return to the raw material state if it is not damaged. Industrial products. Shumo thought for a while. It seemed to be very useful. For example, Tony's steel suit was restored as soon as it was damaged. It can also be used for decomposition, and I don't know if Wolverine's claws are industrial products, and can remove the Edmund alloy on it. The tough shards overlap and upgrade to level 4, and the physical strength and defense it brings is like a soaring feeling. Shumo looked at the last award, nothing showed but a ball of light. Without his response, he couldn't show the original shape. This imaginary head appeared in Shinigami's first episode. The strength is very ordinary, but the body is tall and strong, with the characteristics of the spirit body, it is a good fighter. In the final 2 million draw, Shumo became nervous. Congratulations to host, you have obtained Uzumaki Naruto Fragments X2, Kurosaki Fragments X3, Hebao 2 pieces, Yanos Thrusters, Doraemon Fragments X4, Animal Biscuit Bear Shape, Vaccine Man Skill, Regeneration. Shumo smiled with joy. Except for the character fragments, they are all full versions. The $2 million draw looks a bit small, but it is the essence. The appearance of the propeller is very sci-fi. It looks like a small cone-shaped missile. It is 4-packed and equipped with machinery. With a high-energy core, it can emit flames. The mark level of regeneration skills disappears, and the green cross pattern turns into grass-green leaves, which looks more beautiful. After Shumo sorted out the fragments, skills and items, only the worn-out clothes needed to be thrown away. He took out the Skynet U disk and was about to plug it into the computer port. Rumble. A violent shaking sensation suddenly hit, and the surface began to tremble. Shumo immediately put away the U disk and flew out of the balcony. Looking around, the brightly lit buildings kept extinguishing the lights, and Manhattan was plunged into darkness within a moment. Earthquake. A few days ago, there was a small shaking in the middle of the night, and the earthquake level was very low. Now it is directly a large-scale earthquake. Bang! The gloomy night sky rose with a golden light soaring into the sky. The bright light exploded in the sky, and the energy fluctuations Shumo could feel clearly from far away. Shoo! Several sharp sounds of breaking through the sky sounded not far away, and several ninjas in red were chasing a man in a black t-shirt, covered in blood. It's trouble again. Shumo couldn't help but stroke his forehead, and sighed helplessly when he saw this man running in his direction. It's so good to be a cartoonist, how come you always come here for things worthy of being Marvel Universe? Daily disasters come from the sky. The Punisher knew that there was no time to be with his Punisher. He ran under the eaves of the building, trying to use the familiar terrain of the Hell's Kitchen and the alleys. No, retreat is not the ninja of the dilemma. But these ninjas couldn't get rid of the sticky plaster. They went to Queens and found the local Spider-Man to help them stop the conspiracy. We have to find a helper if we consume it. Because the formed team was so shaken that the mountains shook, the golden light behind it exploded, and bright energy particles spilled into the night sky. The mood of the Punisher. He wanted to pass the Brook Bridge tightly, knowing that it was too late. This was their signal to prepare for the attackers' Union base, and it was urgent. Just about to turn around and go back to meet the enemy. At this moment, on the roof for a while, he said in a low voice. At that moment, the Punisher's light glanced at a balcony and secretly said, "That's the cartoonist who killed the bull's eye. He changed my name decisively." Quote, wearing his pajamas, he rushed towards Shumo who was watching, and the ninja behind also led him. Soon, the Punisher rushed to Shumo and the stranger had never seen him and ran to ask for help. behind him was a group of fierce spirits. Shumo, we need your help. I refuse, and how do you know that Sha meant exactly the same? Who will agree? You killed the bullseye, and Yi's Shumo shook his head and waved Kaido decisively. A clue, I found it myself. I know you will refuse, so I tell you that the ninjas who are digging the ruins of ancient Kunlun under Manhattan look like Frank, but the truth is. Quote. As soon as the voice fell, Shumo couldn't help but chuckle. Kunlun. This is New York. Kun Moxia showed me that several ninjas were close at hand. How could the remains of the face be here? Is there still a dragon frame? The foundation that sounds like an incomparably unconventional agreement will be affected. Then the city will sink, and the deaths and injuries are not real. The previous night and the earthquake were all done together. The Punisher turned his head. Shumo's strength was amazing. He killed the bullseye with just one hit. Undoubtedly, he was stronger than the two of them and said anxiously. Once it succeeds, the odds of winning will be greatly improved for the entire Manhattan and even New Zealanders. Then wait, you said the city will sink. Number. Quote. Daredevil Matt once exclaimed that Shumo was planning to refuse again, but there was something wrong in the back, and you were joking. How could the city collapse? There are a lot of superheroes. If the three white light spheres have not started, how can they be like the end of the world? It's true, I can't help it if I don't believe it. The Punisher exploded. After turning around and looking back to meet the enemy, the ninjas were already 2 steps away behind him, and the situation was not optimistic. After turning around and looking back to meet the enemy, the ninjas were already 2 steps away behind him, and the situation was not optimistic. At this time, the Punisher slammed out and past him, smashing into the ninja squad like lightning. With a bang, like a high explosive bomb, the white wave ball is already at the 3rd level, and the speed is no longer normal. People can catch it for an instant, and just now, the ninja with its teeth and claws was blown into residue. The person didn't expect it at all. He looked back at Gailey and Lorna at the bedroom door. After the earthquake, the two ran in circles, so fast. Shumo didn't say so. Shumo opened his mouth and said, Shojiya, I'll go to lie down. Lorna said without thinking, I'll go too, I can help you. When it arrived, plus the sudden incident, she was relieved. Lorna has stopped showing Shumo's face recently, but has softened more, as if she has stopped mentioning the original things. Coming in and staring at Lorna deeply, Shumo shook Shumo secretly, and Shumo didn't expect Lorna to say that. The 3 of them all looked over, and Lorna felt a little too excited. I don't know how to solve Lorna and watched again. Looking at Shumo, he raised his little thumb and muttered, there is this. Quote. Lorna gave a white glance, and the iron basin that controlled the water flew out to wash the eaves with water first, then turned and the Punisher moved forward. Gialli looked at the metal mop and dragged it on. Magneto didn't know if he had a myocardial infarction after seeing this scene. Quote. My little thumb moved beautifully while speaking. On the way, you. The Punisher hesitated and was about to ask, but was interrupted by Shumo. I'm not a righteous policeman, nor a hero, and at the same time I am not interested in dealing with Kunlun. I just want to let the New Yorkers of tomorrow see my cartoons. Shumo interrupted with an ugly expression. As soon as the Punisher's foundation was destroyed and Manhattan was deeply affected and forced to sink, then he frowned and he could tell that it was true. Is it because of profits that he attaches so much importance to comics? Shumo can't say that the truck will fall into the bottomless crack before it reaches the bookstore. What's more, it will be broken, but what is annoyed is that someone broke his fan value into the account. Who is still in the mood to read comics in the ruins? His fanfare is dead, and the fan value is a little less. Wouldn't the Deadly Comics be released tomorrow? Only 10,000 points less, how much should I lose by then? Who pays? Since the joint will cut his money, don't blame him for taking a large part of the sink, and the living people can support it. Raised a butcher knife, cut it off. Under the ground of a tall building in Midtown Manhattan. The floor area is slightly smaller. The elevator located in the center made a click sound at this time. The elevator opened, and the 5-fingered leader of the Hands-On Association walked out. At the same time, ropes fell around the elevator, and countless armies slid down the ropes. The alliance of defenders formed by Daredevil Matt and Iron Fist Danny Rand has been standing up for a long time and directly confronted his army. The first to walk out of the elevator was the leader Alexandra, a tall European woman, followed by Chinese, Japanese, Latin and black people. Mrs. Gao, the person in charge of the Celestial Division, looks old-fashioned, but in fact the strongest. Murakami, in charge of the Donggying branch, is good at various assassinations in Donggying. Botu, the person in charge of the Americas, uses the Toyo katana. Suwanda, in charge of Africa, is a black man. They are the leadership of Shuheihui, 5 Fingers. 5 people defected from Kunlun in the Celestial Dynasty with the keel bones and use the powerful life energy in the keel bones to survive to this day. In fact, the 5 people are all hundreds of years old and immortal. But the keel bones will dry up one day, and after they frantically searched, they found that another keel bone under Manhattan was sealed by Kunlun. In the past few days, the Shuheihui used all methods to open the seal but failed. Today, the Shuheihui decided to use high-energy explosive bombs to directly blast through the foundation and break it with brute force. Daredevil and others came to stop in time, and at the same time formed a team to protect the safety of Manhattan. There are not many members of the League of Defenders. The leader is Danny Rand, who has just returned to New York, and is now a disciple of Kunlun. He has been dubbed Iron Fist, and his girlfriend Colleen is next to him. Daredevil, who is active in Hell's Kitchen, finds 2 helpers, a couple, Detective Jessica and Black Luke, both of whom are powerful superpowers. There were also Punishers who went out to rescue soldiers. Daredevil's face was very bad at this time. They didn't expect that there would be so many ninjas hiding in this building. With so many foreign armed forces infiltrating in, what are the relevant departments doing? Daredevil complained secretly about a certain black chief. He had been monitoring them very vigorously on weekdays, and now he didn't even have a personal shadow. Danny, it seems that you are a new generation of Iron Fist. It just happens that the seal needs Iron Fist to open. Alexandra took a few steps forward, looking at them, and finally said to Danny. Iron Fist, Danny said angrily. Stop talking nonsense, you have the ability to get it, you traitors. As soon as the voice fell, he lit up from the inside out, and his golden light was shining in his fist, and the whole person rushed out quickly. As soon as the voice fell, he lit up from the inside out, and his golden light was shining in his fist, and the whole person rushed out quickly. Danny's actions were like a fuse. Daredevil and others followed closely, and the ninja army was even more pressured. For a time, the sword and shadow, hidden weapons burst out, and a group of melee. Luke and Jessica have a big advantage in the face of cold weapons with their super strength and resistance. Danny even smashed them with golden fists. Daredevil played with double sticks with superb fighting skills. The League of Defenders entered the Tigers and came out of the cage for a short time, and it was impossible for them to survive. But they were not complacent, knowing that these ninjas in the inner and outer layers were like a pack of wolves staring at them. Constantly throwing out cannon fodder to consume their physical strength, as long as there is a trace of fatigue, they will be torn apart. In just a moment, without touching the 5 fingers, the defenders began to exhaust their strength. At this time, the ninja army was getting faster and faster, and the tiger was already at a disadvantage. Outside the building, the dark night obscured nature, and the voice of, "Haha," was raised gently. Natasha, how is the situation? A question came from Natasha's headset in Black Widow. I am here to act anytime, Coulson, start preparing. Wearing a black tights, wavy red curly hair, and flaming red lips, Natasha gestured to the agents behind him a few times. As the largest official supernatural response agency, it began in-depth investigations as early as after the first small earthquake. The incidents that Coulson investigated were all focused on Manhattan, where the source of the earthquake was enough to attract SHIELD's attention. Mantis catches the cicadas, and the Oriole is waiting for the opportunity in the shield. Bureau behind, using the mini-camera to control the overall situation, resolutely taking action when the League of Defenders is about to lose. Oh, shit, don't do anything. An unknown flight object is approaching. When Coulson was about to answer the call, his eyes widened and he hurriedly called out to the sky. What's the matter, Coulson? Natasha didn't doubt that he had him, and asked the agents behind to suspend the action. Heaven. When Natasha heard the words, she raised her head and looked at the night sky. The sound of buzzing was exploded in layers of air, and a figure passed over her head less than 20 meters away. With very good eyesight and professional equipment, Hawkeye spoke to the communicator on a branch not far away and said, "White kimono, short brown hair and black-rimmed glasses. He can fly, and I didn't find any thruster device at all." Natasha answered, and then said to Collison after a pause, "Notify the chief." "Who is he? Mutant, or superpower?" Rumble. When the five-finger winning ticket was in hand, the bottom of the ground suddenly began to shake violently, and the startled sand particles continued to fall from above, and the dull roar echoed in the entire underground space. The ninja army that was besieging Daredevil and others couldn't help but stop. Everyone heard the reputation. This is the underground, and if the upper part collapses, no one can escape. Boom. The mud slab at the bottom of the elevator collapsed directly, and the crashed gravel fell rapidly, and the five fingers flew away for the first time, and several ninjas who did not respond in time were directly smashed into blood plasma. The defenders secretly cursed for not being killed directly, and fortunately it was only a little collapse. At this moment, a figure appeared at the entrance of the collapsed cave, gently floating down and slowly landing. "Who are you?" Alexandra asked quietly. "Aizen Sosuke." His voice is very flat, and it makes people feel that this person is just chatting. He is extremely calm and completely ignores the surrounding ninja army like nothing. Alexandra could even notice that her brown eyes did not fluctuate at all. Shumo stared at the ninjas around him and the Daredevil and others who had met once, with an unmoving expression. The way he looks now is just to hide his eyes. The transformation technique is exactly the same. Of course, genes can't be changed, just the appearance and clothes. He took all factors into consideration when he set out. He went out so swaggeringly that he would come to the door if he could not be troubled. Currently his comics need to be released on the market and cannot appear in front of S.H.I.E.L.D. Bureau. In order not to reveal his true identity, Shumo used transformation technique to become someone who had never existed before. Only one episode of Shinigami has been released now, and it will be serialized in 5 episodes tomorrow. Aizen will not appear until 2 months before it appears. When Sure enough, Flight approached and found a group of people behind a wavy red-haired woman. S.H.I.E.L.D. had already arrived on the scene. Daredevil was happy, and his super senses told him through various hidden messages that the name Aizen Sosuke was a pseudonym, and his appearance had changed. In fact, he was the cartoonist he saw last time. But he didn't say anything. Shumo was obviously here to help them. It seems that the Punisher brought it. Donghying people. Alexandra's eyes condensed, and the vigilant person who came from unknown has revealed extraordinary gestures just now. They all use the elevator to get down with their 5 fingers. The height is not low. Shumo ignored Alexandra's question, but walked slowly towards the 5 fingers. The faithful hand-joining ninja is like a ghost in the dark night, with a special footstep that turns into a red wave from all directions. The ninja is holding weapons such as 8-gate, katana, flow hammer or darts. Sen Lang's sharp and direct aim at Shumo's vital points, making others fearful. They immediately regarded Shumo as their primary enemy, and there were only a few around Daredevil and his party. It doesn't matter whether the dust removed is 1 or 2 or more, it doesn't make any difference to the naked eye. In the face of the wolves' tears, Shumo's face didn't change a bit, but rather calmly said with interest. As soon as the voice fell, he rushed up at a speed that the naked eye could not catch, and the moment Shunpo activated it, he was in front of a ninja. His face was shocked and he didn't expect it to be so fast. In the next second, his hand was empty, and the samurai sword was not easy to fly. Then there was a flash of cold light. The whole person lost consciousness and fell to the ground. Afterwards, the cold light continued to appear among the wolves, and the cold reflections jumped between each other. Puff! Shumo swung each knife and rolled the air pressure, and the powerful force smashed the victim's body like a mortar, and the pain of the slash spread throughout the whole sound. In the wailing, blood-red limbs fluttered everywhere, slaughtered as clean as hell Shura. In less than a moment, the ninja army of hundreds of people lost a third directly, and the tattered and human-shaped corpses were scattered everywhere, and the pungent bloody smell filled every underground air. The blood gathered together to form a stream. The crimson color was extremely dazzling. Life not commensurate with strength is just a waste. Shumo just raised the katana and flicked it aside, splashing out a little bit of blood. 5 fingers stared dignifiedly at the broken corpses on the ground, and the ground filled with blood. After looking at each other, Mrs. Gao said with cold eyes, "It's a bunch of trash. I want me to do it." Although it is not clear where Shumo's upper limit is, in their opinion, it is only faster, stronger, and the skill of using a knife is even more ordinary. And their 5 fingers are powerful Kunlun traders, inheriting Kunlun's secret, Qigong, proficient in various martial arts and assassination techniques, and practiced for hundreds of years to integrate all martial arts from the East and the West. All the ninjas seemed to feel guilty and bowed their heads slightly, splitting away. Mrs. Gao acted very swiftly in an old-fashioned manner. She filled her feet with qi, and rushed out like a string of arrows. With a slight white light in her hands, she patted Shumo's face. Snapped. A crisp and resounding slap, echoing underground. After Mrs. Gao only felt the severe pain, she was in a trance in the eyes of everyone, like a whipped top spinning at a high speed and hitting several ninjas before she could stop. Vomit. Mrs. Gao's eyes were dizzy. She spit out several teeth under intense dizziness, and a flushed slap was printed on her side. The pupils of the other 4 fingers shrank suddenly into a black spot, and he looked at Shumo with a green expression. Only then did they realize that the man in front of him had not got a trace of blood on his body from beginning to end. They could see the trajectory of the figure when they were slaughtering the ninjas before, but they didn't see anything just now. You must know that the Qigong of the high-strength lady is the strongest in the 5 fingers, even she is confused, which has shown that they have greatly underestimated this man. And the daredevil and others on the side saw this scene and took a breath, which was so fast. Alexandra said in a low voice, "Let's go together, he is only one person." The 3 nodded their heads, and went up together and surrounded them separately. Mrs. Gao also gradually realized that her strength was not as simple as she thought. Facing the 5 people surrounded by Shumo, there was still some distance from Shumo, but he looked at the flaws carefully and surged forward without impulsiveness. Why keep the distance? If you want to hit me reliably, you should approach me and attack, or is it possible that when you are afraid of approaching me, any part of my figure may disappear out of your sight? In Shumo's opinion, this was a joke, and the 5 people sneered and sneered. If this is the case, it is just an unnecessary annoyance. The fighting distance will be meaningful, and it will only be limited when the opponent's strength is equal. Therefore, the fighting distance between me and you does not carry any meaning. As soon as the voice fell, Shumo appeared in front of the 5 people in an instant. Like an avatar, the afterimages appeared at the same time. At the same time, they suddenly swung down at an incomparable speed, and the powerful force instantly split the 5 fingers in half. As soon as the voice fell, Shumo appeared in front of the 5 people in an instant. Like an avatar, the afterimages appeared at the same time. At the same time, they suddenly swung down at an incomparable speed, and the powerful force instantly split the 5 fingers in half. The 5 fingers turned round and the eyes were round, and they wanted to make a sound in their throats, but they couldn't do anything when they were already cold. Following the long and narrow bloodline, the 5 fingers felt nothing at all, but the silver light passed away, and the late pain let them know the disparity between the 2 sides, one after another, the sound of puffs, before and after they fell heavily to the ground. Shumo has never put them in his eyes. Even not showing up in the movie is a gimmick. Superpower doesn't even want to destroy the foundation of Manhattan, so that no one can read his comics. It was a dream. The ninja army who saw this scene fell into a brief silence, and then all rushed up. They are all dead men. Only when there are 5-fingered hand fusion is called hand fusion, otherwise they will lose the meaning of life. At this moment, the underground ceiling kept sliding down the ropes and groups of people in black. Natasha took the lead in landing. Finger Pistol shouted to everyone, "Don't move." But no one listened to her, and the ninjas with their hands still rushed towards Shumo. Their minds of revenge filled their minds and no one could stop them. Fire! Bang bang bang! Shield agents raised their guns and fired, and the spitting snakes raged out, but the red ninjas crawled up to Shumo even if they fell to the ground despite being shot. After a while, even a ninja on the field didn't even survive to make Natasha frustrated. Hawkeye was behind, frowning, and said, "This man has nothing to do." The guns of the agents are not long-eyed. Except for Daredevil and others on the side, ninjas including Shumo are all within the shooting range. Even if they didn't have the idea of aiming at Shumo in advance, the stray bullets would still shoot through the ninja. But Shumo still stood there calmly, looking at the ugly-looking shield agent. the corners of his mouth were slightly curved, and his hands were lifted and released. Wow! With the sound of metal collision, black bullets fell from their hands to the surface and bounced slightly. The sound of crisp ears shocked everyone in S.H.I.E.L.D. Since it's the enemy, then have fun. Shumo's brown eyes gleamed, and he waved out. Roar! A loud noise of beast roaring in the underground space echoed in everyone's ears. No creatures appeared, but everyone clearly felt the monsters appear. Roar! Beast's roar caused smoke and dust to fly, and everyone's expressions panicked, and there was nothing that could clearly feel the abnormality. Stop! We are not the enemy! Natasha hurriedly yelled. She didn't expect the situation to become like this. The chief once said that she shouldn't be an enemy for the time being, but the situation changed so quickly that she caught her off guard. When your gun is pointed at me, it is already. Shumo looked at Natasha, pushed his finger on the black-framed glasses and said indifferently. You wouldn't say that it was actually a friendly army. It was a misfire. Maybe it was, but it's not now. Come on, my pet. Roar. In Shumo's eyes, there was a huge and burly monster on his side, with a cavity in front of him, and a light gray body with a white hard shell mask on his face. There was another roar, except for some movement from Daredevil. Everyone was confused. Daredevil with super senses can feel an unknown monster standing next to Shumo through the small changes of roaring wind pressure and ground stepping. But other people seemed to be invisible. Is it an invisible monster? What surprised Daredevil was that there was no heartbeat, which was incredible. Daredevil did not make a sound reminder. The appearance of S.H.I.E.L.D. Bureau now shows that the fisherman has benefited. The most annoying thing about a righteous police like him is S.H.I.E.L.D. Bureau. Then I came back. Since this is Shumo, how could he have such strength? The cartoonist is not doing his job properly, and is still fighting with S.H.I.E.L.D. Bureau. Natasha, the chief said that support has been sent. What we need is to hold him. Hawkeye squinted his eyes and used high-point equipment to scan various spectrums, but there was no result. Secretly. Not invisible. Now science and technology can detect invisibility and changing colors through X-rays, thermal reactions, etc., but scanning has no results. This shows that such creatures do not have these, or they are shielded. Either way, let them scan the uselessness of the equipment. Yeah, Natasha had no choice but to respond, and the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents separated and surrounded like the previous hand-to-hand meeting. However, they did not act rashly, and the bullet storms were all taken up empty-handed and they could only rely on heavy weapons to fight against them. Shoe began to move, and the click sound made people throb. The keen Hawkeye directly saw the ground slightly collapsed, and hurriedly shouted, "Attack continues to sink into position." Turning around and saying to an agent behind him, "Always pay attention to the source of the sound wave and transmit it to the communicator." Roar. Shu's speed is getting faster and faster, and his heavy body rushes to the surface, raising his hand and making a fist. Bang bang bang. The bullet kept venting towards the void, but it penetrated directly in the next second, without blood splashing as they had imagined. The bullet kept venting towards the void, but it penetrated directly in the next second, without blood splashing as they had imagined. Natasha gritted her teeth and fired the gun, and the result was the same. Did you simply miss it? Or penetrate without injury? Buzz. What? The agents were swept away directly, and screamed in pain and slammed into the wall. Die. An agent rushed to the front to set up the rocket. Bang, the shell flew out, and the Stark Industries product was extremely powerful. Boom. The shells passed through the virtual body and hit the wall on one side in Shumo's line of sight. The crashing rubble collapsed, and the stone wall was smashed into cobweb-like cracks, spreading in all directions. Impossible, I should hit it. The agent shouted with a dull face, and he was shot and flew out in the next second. Until now, he couldn't understand how it could be missed even if he couldn't see it but was close at hand. Hawkeye's face is pale. Is such a big body really dodged? At this time, the underground ceiling kept shaking off the rubble. The surrounding walls were already covered with cracks, and countless grains of sand fell. No, the shell hit the pillar just now. Retreat. Natasha shouted to the team. Collison, pull us up. S.H.I.E.L.D. is a powerful emergency response agency. It has thought out all measures, and quickly responded and lowered the small lifeboat of the Reunion 2, and the agents hurriedly fled to it. The faces of Daredevil and the others were tense, and now the collapse is undoubtedly buried underneath for no one's life. Just as he was hesitating whether to take a wave, the Punisher waved hello in it. When they saw this, they had to ran over and ran up. Shumo put the dummy away and stuffed it into the warehouse. Anyway, he didn't have this kind of dummy consciousness and wouldn't complain. He looked up at the lifeboat that was about to fly out of the ground, stepped gently in the air, and kicked it slightly. The white air waves surged from the hit point and spread out like ripples in the water. Shumo's whole body burst out like a cannonball. In an instant, he overtook the lifeboat and then flew out of the ground. Shunpo flashed again and again and flew out of the building within a few strokes. Natasha and other agents finally let go of the eyes of Shumo's back as they watched, and the man who knew how to fly could attack the lifeboat in the air, leaving them all dead without a place to bury them. Rumble. The building began to sink to varying degrees. As soon as the lifeboat fell outside, a dazzling great fireball appeared on the horizon. Hey, did you do it? I'll let Johnny teach you. Chapter 61. Shumo stepped on the sky. At this time, the clouds became more and more gloomy, as if they wanted to press down. At this moment, a dazzling flame flew violently in the distance, and the burning flame looked like a young man. Thunderbolt. Shumo raised his eyebrows. There was no one else in this appearance. He secretly said, "It seems that the Fantastic Four have already appeared, and that's right. The 5 of them went to heaven in the last draw. Hey, you can also fly. It just so happens that I am not a normal hero, but a superhero. You should raise your hand and surrender." Johnny in the Flames was triumphant, and soon after he got the ability, Shield begged to come, and he flew out impulsively. For the other 3 people to end their wrangling with Shield, Johnny even thought about how the New York Times would report tomorrow. It should be the title of How Johnny the Thunderbolt Saves Manhattan, and he will be praised by people all over the world. Shumo looked at Johnny's eagerness, and said calmly, "Don't speak rashly, it will only reveal your weakness." Johnny, who seemed to be humiliated by the thunderbolt, shouted in anger, "I'm going to burn you to ashes." Johnny, who was overprotected by his sister Susan, had never been ridiculed like this, especially when he had just obtained superpower. Immediately waved his hand, a pillar of flames burst out of his body and swallowed Shumo under the raging fire. The extremely high temperature pillar of fire swept across the air, and the billowing heat waves burned the clouds and turned dark red, looking like a sea of fire in the clouds. Fiery and violent energy exploded quickly, and little sparks began to fall to the ground like meteors. The Shield agent on the ground was stunned. In addition to Magneto's assassination of the president, even the criminal Green Goblin in the carnival incident only killed people with technology bombs. Now, the superpower's display of power that destroys the world can be regarded as refreshing their 3 views. Even if Daredevil and others were shocked, they took this opportunity to escape quickly, otherwise it would not be so easy to get out of the game. Have you seen it? If it is too late to surrender now, Firebolt is the strongest. The frivolous Johnny approached slowly with rebellious triumph. Thousands of degrees of high-temperature flames, boiling incomparably burning, thin air is gradually scarce burned, evaporated and changed, and even the clouds have been burned through a large hole, which is jaw-dropping. Hey, is it dead? Johnny, who went his own way, turned into a burning man and explored the falling sea of flames. The average soldier who was rich in combat would never be so reckless. But Johnny was not. He just wanted to see if his arrogant middle-aged man was burnt to charcoal. At this moment, a hand drilled out of the glorious sea of fire and grabbed Johnny, who had turned into a flame like lightning, and the high temperature above climbed onto his arm. However, it seems that the burning of thousands of degrees only made the arms light red, and it did not seem to cause any harm. It's a taboo to underestimate the enemy. Shumo's eyes and Sosuke's face is very flat. The toughness of LV4 brings strong defense and complete regeneration. This temperature can only make him feel the heat, not the burn. Shumo clung to Johnny's neck tightly, stepped on the air, and turned around suddenly, as if throwing a ball, throwing down Johnny. A bang, ring of air exploded at the place where he left his hand. Call. The violent air wave quickly turned into a hurricane and attacked in all directions, immediately extinguishing the raging flames. Johnny moved away from the clouds in an instant like a cannonball, and fell down. The flames on his body were directly blown across the sky by the powerful airflow, not bright or dark, intermittently, and extinguished several times. Quickly leave. Natasha Warong shouted, because a meteor in the sky pointed directly at where they were. No, it should be said that it was a ruined building. No, no, burn faster, burn faster. Johnny, who was awake from his recklessness, was horrified, knowing that if he didn't turn into a flame man and fly again, otherwise he would fall to the ground with flesh and blood, and he would undoubtedly be a pool of blood waiting for him. Johnny, who had just obtained superpower, didn't know how deep the water in this world was. He was so unhappy that he felt that he would become the master of the flame with a wave of his hand. Ben is just a stone man. Sister Susan can only open barriers. Reed is like noodles, not as strong as him, as if he is the strongest in the world. But I didn't expect to fall asleep in a few days. Under the desire to survive, layers of burning flames began to erupt, the air became distorted, and he finally turned into a flame man. However, the force that pushed him still made Johnny crash into the ruins, like a meteor falling to the ground, and a wave of horror spread out. The ruins burned into the fire, and Johnny in the center was lying on his stomach in the pothole, and flames spewed out of his mouth like a substantial liquid. However, this is not over yet, and the sound of "het" Fumo. Several stars lit up in the sky, piercing the night sky and hitting down. Sir, this is a high explosive reaction. The SHIELD agent who withdrew to Yuanyuan said in horror with one person holding the instrument. Stop. A blue light curtain instantly appeared on Johnny's head. Bibo Ball would not listen to its orders and slam it on the barrier. Boom, resounded across the world, a vast expanse of whiteness, and then a pillar of fire that covered the entire ruin rose into the sky. The billowing black smoke dazzled from the fire, the surrounding rubble was all destroyed and disintegrated, and the shock wave of dust and soil burst out with the sand. The lifeboat stretched out the barrier, hitting a claw from the bottom, and slammed into the ground to spread it open. Pay close attention, Hawkeye called out hysterically, but the faint voice was overwhelmed by the overwhelming wind. The loud noise like a mountain collapse and the ground cracked, deafening. Shumo pushed his glasses with his fingers, and looked down at the entire ruins covered by black smoke, which had been wiped out into huge potholes. Under the reflection of the lens, Shumo squinted his eyes. Really tenacious. The full version of the white wave ball can destroy a city with 3, even if it is only 3 levels, it still has a tenth of the power. The Fantastic Four blocked it. I saw Johnny's body being blocked by a rubber mesh. Susan was sweating profusely, with a blood stain on the corner of her mouth, panting and caring. Ben, how is it? Okay. The stone mankind made of crimson rocks crossed his hands in front of him, his entire front body was burnt to black, and he coughed dumbly. Fortunately, it just hurts. After speaking, he fell heavily. Book. Reed and Susan hurriedly rushed up and shouted. Johnny, who couldn't make any sparks, got up at this time. He just returned from the edge of the ghost gate, regretting and guilty, crying with tears on his face. It's all my fault, it's all me, it's all because of me. He's passed out in a coma. Reed took a test, and finally let go of his heart a little. Not far away, there were bursts of buzzing sounds from high in the sky. Several fighter planes flew at extremely fast, and there was a huge shadow in the clouds further away. Because of the language you despise, you didn't hear what I said. The sound of the dark, but extremely clear. Everyone looked up, and the Commander Hill and Chief Non-Chief of the aerospace carrier looked at Shumo in the ultra-clear picture on the big screen. Shumo stepped into the dark clouds, looked down condescendingly, smashed his glasses, star-like eyes, and said calmly. From the beginning, there was no one in the sky, superpowers, mutants, or even gods, but this unbearable window of time for the throne in the sky is coming to an end. Next, I will stand at the top. Midtown High School. Peter walked alone on the way out of school. Harry, who used to be with him, has now dropped out of school to manage the Osborne enterprise. Mary, who was a goddess, has been by Harry's side all the time. He didn't tell anyone that Green Goblin was Uncle Norman, and to outsiders he was as missing as Tony Stark, and there was still a glimmer of hope for Harry. But Peter still doesn't know who rescued him, whether Uncle Norman really rushed to the street, all of which was left behind by the current Peter. Because today is a new day for Marvel Comics. Shinigame's Naruto, which was put on the new official website a few days ago, is really fun. Although it is a small game, there are several new characters in it, namely Naruto's Uchiha Sasuke, Haruno Sakura, and Hitaki Kakashi. And Shinigami's Sato Yasutora, Inoue Orihime, Ishida Ryu. According to the official announcement, these characters are all characters that will appear in the next issue, and they promise that each update will be one step faster than the release of the comics. This made the fans excited, and they poured into the official website to play small games. The graphics are not very delicate, but with the ninjutsu and spiritual power release of the 5 Flowers 8 Gate, it is simply fun to play. There is even a big touch to guess the next plot direction through the skills released by the characters. But it's all foolish. Such things as Reikiri, Great Fireball Technique, Crescent Sky Chong, 3-Day Shield, etc. can be said to be diverse. Shumo deliberately set up a forum communication function on the official website, and a large number of fans rushed in, as if they found an organization to remind them all, and the traffic flowed straight up. The outside of the bookstore was already crowded with people, and Peter slowly followed behind, but he saw the familiar figure in front of him. Dave. The man turned his head when he heard the words, and the two laughed face to face. Peter, are you coming in line too? Certainly. Dave is a curly-haired boy who is bullied by others because of his weak character, just like Peter before. It's me. Dave quickly bought 2 magazines, and took the lead in turning over. Boy Jump, and new characters appeared on the cover. A black hedgehog with reddish hair and golden bangs, the height of a primary school student, with a golden brick hanging around his neck. Sure enough, there will be new comics appearing in every issue. Dave read it with a smile and stood aside. When Peter bought it back, the two walked side by side for a while, watching them with gusto, and when they were separated, they turned to a page of a new comic. What makes them strange is that there is a card on this page, wrapped with plastic film. Huh, Peter, I have a card here, it's weird. I have it too, but it says chestnut balls, and the pattern looks good. Peter raised the card. Kaido. I wrote the light shield sword, the pattern is completely different from yours. Dave scratched his head and said in surprise. I wrote the light shield sword, the pattern is completely different from yours. Dave scratched his head and said in surprise. Will it be related to the new comic? The two people who were going to be separated stopped at the edge of the wall and looked down. Peter seemed to have forgotten his Spider-Man identity at this moment, and he was completely focused and alert. I also didn't notice that there was a cloud of dark liquid on the eaves slipping into the backpack. Edward still bought back the comics as usual, turned on the computer, clicked on Twitter and the official website forum, and one of the top posts caught the eye, which was compiled by the official administrator. Monster Card Duel, a game linked with the new comic, Yu-Gi-Oh! New comic, Card Duel. Edward is a little confused about how the game and comics are linked, and they are also linked. It opened quickly. He did not rush to the new comics. As a professional comic critic, he cannot be affected by the promotion. He is in his usual state. First of all, Sonic's latest words in One Punch Man, which were mentioned in the upper part of the story, were vividly expressed under the swift and violent speed of the exquisite painter, and then came across Saitama because of a mace who didn't want to work. Seeing this, Edward's interest came. This Sonic looks weak but has amazing speed. Will Saitama fail to fight? A little expectation. Sure enough, the two started and Sonic's expression suddenly changed to a devil-like smile, a little scary. But Saitama said, you can see it by looking at your innocent smile. Edward touched the non-existent cold sweat on his forehead, and spit out fiercely, what kind of innocence is this? Next, Sonic officially launched an attack, turning into white light moving at high speed among the trees, without even a shadow, and kept jumping close. Saitama's attitude also began to change. Even though the painting is still simple, it seems to be a bit slow. Edward took a brief sip of the coffee, and turned his mind slowly, without missing any details, just as Sonic was about to launch an attack from behind. Saitama looked back abruptly, forcing him to kick it with the wind blade, but the next second, Edward's eyes glared and his legs were closed, with a strange feeling of speechlessness. Sonic was shot and his eyes burst with bloodshot eyes, and Edward couldn't bear to look straight. Sonic, can't afford to provoke, can't provoke. Edward turned over, and the coffee he was holding suddenly shook, and brown liquid spilled out. He trembled and finally put the cup on the table, with his eyes resting on the cartoon, and he spoke in a deep voice. Heroes Association. It's breaking again. No, this time should be reshaping the definition of the world of group heroes. Shumo, what are you expressing? Before I only stayed on Saitama who was interested in it, but now I define this group. It's really a terrible thought. Edward gasped in horror. The clue that the entire army of the Shuheihui will wipe out all this is at the end of the shield. Trident headquarters. Collison didn't stop from last night to this morning. There were too many things last night. Why did the hand-to-hand association cause an earthquake? And this person? Secretary, this is information. Where is it? Why did Daredevil and others appear underground? What is their contradiction? As Daredevil and others fled, Nick Fury sat in a chair and took it over to take a look. Boom. Shield. Bureau must look for it by itself. Other than that is the Eastern character for self-proclaimed, Aizen Sosuke. Nick Fury slapped the table fiercely, his swarthy face darkened more thoroughly, unable to describe it in words. Not tolerate. Collison handed over the information with an ugly expression. Bad, backed by the Security Council, as the largest official institution on the planet, you can get whatever information you want. Don't look at Jin and call it the Underworld Emperor. Black and white business is all over the place. I didn't know who was watching him until I died. As long as it has existed in the world, more or less information will flow into the data, he will not be frustrated. Secretary, except the library. Magic, mutants, aliens, vampires, etc., although many do not know, they are not ignorant. There is no such person in the search for a strategic national defense attack. Quote. Collison hesitated to call for nothing. Nick Fury furiously picked up the data card. There was only one name and a photo on it except the time. Quote. The Skuru invasion occurred in the 1990s. Fortunately, we compared the information database and collected data from various countries. The key points were not missed, but they could be stopped overnight. Continue to investigate. If there is another alien invasion, the team plan must be advanced, and Tony's whereabouts should be found out quickly and said, could it be an alien that suddenly appeared? It's like 90 hours. Quote. Nick Fury waved his hand when he heard the words, and he was a little frustrated by the wave of unsettled waves. When Collison left, Faye was Carol Danvers' Captain Marvel and just thinking about the time when Chief Ruo took out the BB machine he carried with him, and his expression was unpredictable. Aizen Sosuke is so powerful, he has only seen this power in Captain Marvel. Come on, it's not true that what we lack in S.H.I.E.L.D. is the person carrying the banner. Natasha, are you here? As soon as Collison went out, he saw Natasha in front of the French window in the corridor. Natasha blamed herself a little. It's nothing, Saitama. What Saitama? It's nothing, it's just a bit more tactful that you won't set up a strong enemy for S.H.I.E.L.D. Can't say that, you have done a good job, and the age of comic games is younger than her, and Captain Steve is only 8 years older than her. If Coulson has Saitama in a hurry, it would be nice. Quote. Collison exhorted, and then felt a little bit. Looking down at the door, no one immediately closed the door and looked happily. The new issue was bought by him this morning. I will leave first. Quote. Natasha and Collison looked at One Punch Man differently. As a captain who has been admiring the captain since he was young, Saitama as a renegade, hurriedly ran into his lounge with a crooked door, pulled out comic magazines from under the sheets, patrolled, and even just wanted to shout after reading, even if I never get promoted, I won't be promoted again. Look at the second story. As a captain who has been admiring the captain since he was young, Saitama as a renegade, hurriedly ran into his lounge with a crooked door, pulled out comic magazines from under the sheets, patrolled, and even just wanted to shout after reading, even if I never get promoted, I won't be promoted again. Look at the second story. It's so fragrant. Of course, Collison and other readers like it. In fact, Collison took the touch to read at the beginning. Saitama's interests were different because of his dislike. What he liked was the power of Saitama. Collison once wondered how perfect the captain would be if he had this power. Hell's Kitchen Law Evil Dao often ignores him, but asks a little surprised, you also? Daredevil Matt bought 2 comic magazines under the suspicion of the bookstore clerk. Matt can like the above description of Ghoul through subtle touch, which is too realistic. Quote. Punishing this method is very slow for comics. The Punisher turned in through the window, and Matt had become accustomed to his own opinion. In his eyes, ghoul cannibalism is just like evil people, and half ghoul is just going astray and bought. Quote. Can you not buy it? It's not easy for such a strong man to draw comics, But the next few words overturned his notion that the appearance of Hinashi and Ryo's son and daughter. We are a ghoul searcher who has read Edward's Twitter and we don't agree or deny it. He has an official. Now the situation here is very dangerous. Please leave as soon as possible. Mother. Hina, run away. It's Kazuko, and a trace of someone worth saving. Next is my job. Come on. Hurry up. Kill her. HMPH. The mother gave up her life for the sake of her child, it really makes me look into it, I know how to reflux acid water. You ghouls' posture that imitates human beings is only disgusting. Amen, go quickly. Don't go out, Shaoxi. Jin Muyan tears to death. What do you want to do? Sigh, despair, hatred is this expression, unscrupulously grinned wildly, the time is up. I heard a cruel voice slowly dismembering you in a trance, what do you want to say? Quote. Shinshi, scoff. The blood was spilled on the earth, like the white flowers of the other shore, which should have bloomed in heaven, but they were in full bloom in hell and suffered all the pain. Covering Hinashi's eyes, I hated my weakness very much. Ryoko's kindness and simplicity still linger in his mind. The Punisher throbbed in his heart, and tremblingly picked up the cigarette and lit it, feeling uncomfortable. Sound. Puff. Go out with 5 fingers. Daredevil sighed. Mask of justice, ugly face. Quote. The Punisher was expressionless, closed his eyes suddenly opened, closed the comic magazine, and jumped out of the window. Alan Waugh. Ding dong, Edward you are following has released news, please go. At noon, the account that fans must follow posted on Twitter, the title of which made people feel fresh. Hell is empty, the devil is in the world. The new issue of Juvenile Jump has been released, whether it is Saitama hitting eggs or cruel. The body giant explodes, or Naruto's partner appears. As well as the emergence of a new type of battle of the new comic Game King. In fact, there is no such thing as the most, but he reminds me of a lot of suffering. Mato Wushu's actions seem to be challenging the bottom line of human nature, indeed because of his position, but such torture is indeed. Edward's tweet, I don't know, why did he do this, is he perverted? Or is it passed on to all the ghouls because of the persecution of the ghouls? The district is exploded. In the current situation of mutants, perhaps out of our sight, there may be a devil like Wushu Manto and appear in the world. This possibility is not ruled out. It seems that the follow-up development is over, but it seems that only half of the comic commentary has made countless comics conjecture. Flagship comment. Hina is so miserable, even if her mother died in front of her eyes, even if she was so pitiful by Ryoko's sister, she was so kind but killed by a dog thief. Maybe there is a reason. Edward guards. Didn't you find out? It's British. This time Jinmu knows that his concept must be changed, it is too weak. Well, it goes without saying that the heroes in the comics can be seen through the gap by covering their eyes and covering their eyes. Weak confession. Sonic's smile is paid by me. It's not the money. To put it bluntly, Edward is counseled. Before, the existence of the Saitama Association completely overthrew the definition of heroism. Why didn't Edward talk about it? Absolute selfless dedication is a complete irony of the captain's spirit. Quote. And these funds come from fundraising, who of us donated? We only pay taxes. Quote. Fart, and the current generation of parents, grandparents and grandparents. In my comics, it can be regarded as a person's opinion, and this hero association represents the entire worldview. No, but I threw it away without paying attention. I regret it after watching The Game King. Quote. Yes, I'm afraid that Edward was stopped by a battlefield veteran at his door the next day, and he sighed silently. Just like the fanciful speculation above, he looks so handsome with a card called the Black Magic. Quote. My Captain Steve is really widely circulated, from the president to the civilians, no Americans don't know. Edward watched the tweets and made comparisons, and he would be promoted by someone who wanted to. Those who watch Captain America really can't say. The United States does have freedom of speech, and it's paintable. If the righteous God in their hearts is ridiculed, they will be on TV or even debate in Congress. If he started the Association of Heroes and the Steve team, the media would not pay more attention. I hope this storm will pass. Edward turned off the computer and looked at the sky without a god. It's not all comics, and even many people have only read this comic. Ryoko's death is considered to have left a lump in the hearts of fans. It turns out that the ghoul life described by Shumo is very cruel, so Edward didn't mention it. As long as he didn't mention it, it would also plant a layer of landmines for the subsequent outbreak. Edward's Twitter also drew on Shumo's intentions because of, the hell is empty and the devil is in the world. I'm curious about what the jumps that come up every week are, and they are so attractive. But more are scornful. They can only regret and sympathize with the slightest words. They are interested in painting, and they are not too lazy to click on it. Except for the elites and celebrities, most of them are young people, and Shumo is about to work on them. In the top 5 popularity, Twitter netizens have some divisions. Boss, we have finished the animation of One Punch Man, please watch it. The leader of the anime team looked happy. These people won't tell the comics, let's get started. Shumo answered. The animation began to play, and after hitting the vaccine man, the classic opening song began to sing. Marvel Marvel Public E-Punch. 3, 2, 1, Killshot. Participate. Sure to win. To say. Exclamation mark. What's the matter with setbacks? I'm overwhelming. One punch. That's it. Streak winning streak. Shout out loud. Always win undefeated. Crush everything. Strength. Gain strength. Until close to one's own limit. Heroes, whether it's praising my voice or applauding me, these are all unnecessary. Hero. I don't know when I will taste the taste of failure. The face is even more, but before that, let's fight, hero. Lonely hero. Under the theme song of A Punch in Saitama's male sign, Get Up and the team leader manga officially begins. Very well, I am satisfied. Shumo stood up and applauded. It was almost the original anime from the previous life. The seiyuu was passionate, and the painting patted the palms of exquisite standards, and there was nowhere to choose. For this, let Uncle Andy give you more bonuses. More than a dozen people in the animation group cheered at one time, and you will make 2 separate movies and smile like a chrysanthemum. But don't be arrogant, the rest of the animation needs you to create together. Shumo looked at each other with a deep sense of time. 2 animations, the door was opened, and a dozen people came in, surprised by the animation crew. These are newly recruited personnel who are also incorporated into the animation group. At the same time, they will definitely be low. Anime, Attack on Titan, and Tokyo Ghoul. Quote. Then Shumo turned around and left. The animation group expanded and doubled and checked, and then it would appear on the TV station. Andy and will mean competition. There was only one before, but now it hurts if there is comparison, and a group of poorly produced anime products will stay in the future. Shumo chuckled. There is a strong smell of gunpowder in your room. Shumo, now the finished product is out. First put it on the network platform to be accepted. Nearly 30 people are responsible for the animation production. It can be said that they are separated from Shumo and walked side by side in the company's work area. Uncle Andy, let's solve it. After I am a practical cartoonist, Shumo disappeared in the dark clouds, leaving only the kid. Shumo walked out of the building and looked back. It seemed like a world away. Now that the company's expansion to the 40 level is critical, the release of comics is unstoppable. Shumo looked at the sky and clouds, followed the standards of the comics industry, and gradually began to build a new fusion company. Landau's heart smiled. This world only looks at fists. Everyone in the field dumbfounded. Shield should look like a muggle, but no one found it. Crunch. My steak, mine. As soon as Shumo entered the door, Gialli grabbed the plastic bag like a wolf and put it on the table. Lona also waited for a long time and smiled. Welcome back, Shumo. Since Lorna had some overreaction the last time, the relationship between the two has become unclear. In the past, Lorna would not let Shumo buy her share, but now she doesn't refuse at all. If you buy it, I will eat it. Maybe he started to take another step in the direction of the scumbag. Humans, they will always look like they used to hate. Shumo touched the bridge of his nose and sat down at the dinner table. The 3 of them sat opposite each other, and lunch began so warmly. But how long does this atmosphere last? Jolly wrinkled her little nose, looked at Shumo and asked. Shumo, aren't you Chinese and American? Why don't you cook? I heard that Asian men can cook. Huh. Lorna also looked at him curiously. No, you got it wrong, it's actually a woman. Shumo denied it with a black face, and said angrily, draw a gourmet meal in the next issue, and prescribe medicine to see if you eat it or not. After the meal, Lorna took the initiative to wash the dishes. They were not accustomed to eating these takeout meals on cartons. Shumo used to make them. Now that Gwen knows, it will be a little troublesome. Shumo stared at the back of Lorna's kitchen girl, her graceful figure, and the car headlights personally identified by transformation technique last time. For a moment. Wait, last time, did I touch myself? Suddenly, Shumo walked to the balcony and found that the building might need to be enlarged a bit. Alice, what's your opinion? Sir, I think the Tony Stark villa on West Blue Shore meets your requirements. The soft voice of a child sounded, and a realistic image of a little girl in a red dress appeared beside Shumo. This is the artificial intelligence Skynet. After all, there is self-awareness. Even Ja Wis, who is not as good as hers, has a name, so he simply named Alice. As soon as Shumo came back, he inserted the U-disc into the computer port to activate Alice, and then bought a set of separate projection equipment to connect it in the morning, which was a bit worse than Tony's. There is no way people will modify it and make it self-made. Oh, Alice is someone's house, although it has been missing now. Shumo said helplessly. The world I live in is my house. Alice flipped through Byakugan humanely. Then your world is over. Shumo turned back when he heard this and changed the subject and said, how about after seeing this world? Can you produce a Terminator robot? Of course it is possible to produce Texas directly in one step, but it requires a lot of materials. Materials. I have two here, look at them. Shumo took the Janos incinerator and the power source out of the warehouse and asked Alice to scan them. These two must be used with robots or modified humans. These two must be used with robots or modified humans. This seems to be part of Janos in the comics. Alice looked at him suspiciously, but didn't ask. When Alice evaluated him, Shumo's mouth rose slightly. Since Alice knows the comics through the internet, she must know that she actually came from Terminator, but there is no response. This is the fuzzy processing of its thinking by the system. Subconsciously neglecting, even if placed in front of him abruptly, there is no fluctuation at all. Even if someone mentions it, it doesn't matter. In summoning characters and self-aware items, the system will directly set them. 1. Whether to retain the original memory. 2. Whether there is a back door. 3. Whether to blur the thinking. The back door is the weak point. Shumo can directly format the summoned objects forcibly through the system. The previous experience was completely blank. In the future, the summons will be left behind. Shumo is not worried, but the universe ability is really weird. Like Professor X, it's like a joke in control. After scanning, Alice said softly, plus these two can only produce one Genos. There are many materials on this planet that do not exist, and there is no way to mass produce them. The others are just TX. Shumo nodded, and then Gary ran in and shouted, I knew Alice was with you. Come and watch Peppa Pig with me. Peppa Pig is a cartoon specially drawn by Shumo for Ghana using Shadow Clone, and Cat and Mouse will be released soon. Alice didn't care when she heard it. Shumo ran out with Gialli. As for, just disappear and flash past, won't it be enough? Shumo shook his head. Once Alice is with Gialli, she loses the posture of destroying the world's big boos, like a little girl who loves to play. Oh, next, there is another wave of face-seeing lottery. Shumo looked at the sky gradually entering the dusk. Today is the number 1, and this fan value is scary for only half a week. The number of fans displayed on the system interface is over 12.3 million. Congratulations to host, Get. Doodoo. Shumo, recently I found that Peter had some problems. I just saw Peter's uniform turned black, it looks a bit. Gwen whispered. Even though Gwen didn't have much communication with Peter, she knew that Peter was Shumo's friend, and she hurriedly told her about some abnormalities. Well, I will go see what happened to Peter and ask you a math problem. Queens, New York. In a church, the bells of dong 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 sounded, ah. The painful voice screamed in the bell tower. There was a figure tumbling under the big clock, making hysterical calls, as if endless pain was tormenting his spirit. Peter regrets it. He just thinks that the black spider suit is so cool. This suit can bring him great power and rapid speed, which is simply wonderful. But the side effects followed. All the anger from the past broke out, and he was extremely arrogant and became a Spider-Man in the dark. But he almost killed the thief who was only stealing things. This was not the Spider-Man 493, he thought. Peter, who had come to the realization, quickly wanted to take off his battle uniform and solve it before the symbiote completely invaded him. Peter could feel the symbiote gradually weakening. His body was completely black and madly hitting the clock. His hands were torn apart, the symbiote was torn apart, and a black mass of matter fell below. Sweating profusely and exhausted, Peter finally leaned back on the pillar in embarrassment, panting, thinking that it was finally over. He was Peter Parker, the same him. Just as Peter was happy to go home, there was a muffled sound from downstairs. Peter hurriedly got up and looked down. The virus-like black symbiote enveloped a person like flowing water. He had only time to see the person's face. It's Lightning Thompson, the star of the school football team. How did he come to the church? Peter, help me. Thompson was dumbfounded and shouted loudly. Speaking of speaking, Thompson often bullied Peter at school, but he couldn't do it when he became a little spider. This time he entered the church just to pray that he could pass the graduation exam and be admitted to a well-known rugby club. But I never expected to see Peter, and saw the dark horny lump from Peter falling on him. Hold on, Thompson. Peter hurriedly jumped from above, trying to pull the symbiote, but he could land for a moment, and he staggered because of exhaustion. And these wriggling black liquor swallowed completely in an instant like a black monster, eroding the whole body like a virus. Oh, no, Peter blamed himself. If it weren't for the innocent people he was here, how could he be possessed? And if he hadn't noticed at first, Thompson would not be like that. Oh, I met Peter again. Thompson was completely dark like a replica Spider-Man, with a hoarse and sharp voice coming out. Thompson will wake up soon. Peter shouted again and again, hoping that Thompson would wake up by himself. As soon as the voice fell, the venom that Thompson had melted suddenly waved out a black whip and directly knocked Peter out, slamming it heavily on the stone wall. Ha ha ha, Peter is awesome, I am Thompson. Venom roared loudly. Thompson, who was supposed to be a bad thing, would have such a powerful power, and no one can refuse this power. Venom roared loudly. Thompson, who was supposed to be a bad thing, would have such a powerful power, and no one can refuse this power. This kind of power can continue to bully others. Awesome. Peter, why don't you be bullied by me honestly? Weak and incompetent, you can only live permanently under my fist. A fierce light appeared on Dewey's hideous face, and he slammed a punch on Peter once again. Boom! The heavy blow caused cracks in the stone wall, and the bloody Peter was unable to slide down the wall, coughing up blood. Thompson, listen to me, it will only hurt you. Peter's silky bloodline overflowed from the corner of his mouth. The spider silk catapult was still in the red suit, and the body was exhausted. Was beaten twice and now has absolutely no backhand strength. Hurt me, you are jealous of my power. Hearing the words of the poison knight, he suddenly jumped into thunder, and the black shell of the whole body was solidified, gradually becoming larger, and his sturdy body was like a hill. Let's talk if you can survive. Spider-Man, Peter Parker. The whole body leaned forward violently, and his hands raised his casserole-big fists and slammed on Peter like a violent storm. Bang bang bang. At first, Peter still had the strength to protect his head, but he fell weakly after a few punches. He only felt that there was no pain in his whole body, and he could hear the sound of cracking bones in his ears. Poison Yoruichi grabbed the bloody Peter's neck and lifted it up in the air. With the other hand, he continued to hit this good New York neighbor with his fists. Goodbye, Peter. Dai threw it upward, and with gravity pulling, his fist suddenly blasted out. His mouth opened wider and wider, sharp teeth popped out, and his long tongue stuck out with mucus. The purple line and black shadow flashed past. Ohm! The double punches caused a small popping sound, and Dai immediately looked back. Da. The sound of footsteps followed, and the Sombra embracing Peter out of the shadows, under the refraction of the moonlight. A teenager with pale hair, a striped short-sleeved jacket and black short pants. What horrified Dai was the four-tail-like, sharp crimson alien limbs on both sides of the waist. He asked blankly, how much is 1000 minus 7? 1000 minus 7. What are you, kid? Dai's long tongue rolled in the air, and Madara's white teeth were sharpened between the mouth of the blood basin. He clearly saw 4 strange whips growing on both sides of the white-haired boy's waist. For the time being, think so. Obviously this boy is not a human, but a mutant. Body upgraded. Forget it, as long as you stop him on the path of murder, you will die. The white-haired boy slowly put the blood-filled Peter against the wall and put him away, and when he was about to get up, he was grabbed by the corner of his trousers. Run away, run away. With fresh water in his mouth, Peter weakly persuaded him that he couldn't watch the boy in front of him go to death. The power of Poison Yi is stronger than that of possessing him, and it is unceremonious to say that even if he put on a red uniform, Peter will soon fall into a disadvantage. Peter didn't know where the boy emerged from, but it seemed that he was weak in writing. Even if he stretched out 4 whips behind him, he didn't feel much fighting. And this pale face looked a bit unspeakable. Have seen. Impossible. And this whip seems to have been seen somewhere. Peter was hit continuously, and now his mind is a little confused and his vision is a bit blurred. A little bit of blood was covered in it, and it kept slipping from his face. At this time, Jin Muyan has already put on a mask in Ghoul in the comics, but the appearance have changed greatly. You can't see it from your face alone. It would be obvious if there was a mask, but Jin Muyan didn't wear it now. In addition, the manga is flat and black and white. If it is 2D anime, Peter can guess it even if it is messy. Peter felt a little plausible by virtue of his super strength, and he was confused. Jin Muyan turned sideways and glanced at Yu Guang indifferently. It's okay, I won't lose. Peter, wait for me to kill him first, and then I will clean up you. The poisonous knight rolled into the tongue, and the deep grinning with his teeth and claws, the powerful force made him confident to reach an unprecedented height. Die. The poisonous knight's feet slammed on the surface and turned into a jet black bullet and burst out, leaving only cobweb-like cracks and slightly sunken pits in place. Keep talking. Jin Muyan said that he was calm. His left eye socket suddenly became pitch black, and the pupil flashed, turning black and red bottom like a black sun engulfing the world, revealing endless darkness, and some red threads extended from the eye socket. You are just a weak one. As soon as the voice fell, Jin Muyan put his hands on the front frame, and the fists of Dai, as if they were discussing, fell on the crossed arms, making a dull clashing sound. At the same time, the scaly tentacles of the 4 Kazuko behind him suddenly thrust up. As if 4 crimson beams of light pierced through the dark night, they went straight to the door of the poisonous knight quickly, accurately, and fiercely. As if 4 crimson beams of light pierced through the dark night, they went straight to the door of the poisonous knight quickly, accurately, and fiercely. Puff! The 4 hezi pierced through the dark arms of the knight, splashing black filaments on the ground, and hitting the throat like a broken bamboo. With a little buffer, the poisonous knight's head flashed like a lightning, and he brushed it together, and another black liquid substance was pierced and spilled. Get in the way. At this time, Jin Muyan was in the period when he joined the bronze tree after being tortured by the gecko. He accepted the fact that he was a ghoul, and became extremely strong. Abandoning the weakness he once had, he became furious and aggressive when fighting, thinking that the strong was himself. For those who maliciously hinder themselves, they will erase them without hesitation. Jin Muyan's expressionless face changed, and the fierce god and evil break stared at the poison knight, stepped forward, Kazuko threw it out, and at the same time, his thick hands were firmly locked in his hands. Boom! The 4 red pillars directly hit the side of the forehead of the poison knight, and a muffled thunderous sound exploded, and a transparent air ring emerged. At the same time, both feet jumped up in the air and kicked hard on their abdomen, causing them to fly upside down like an offline kite. However, the combo is not over yet. I saw the wind blowing under Jin Muyan's feet, repeatedly stepping out, turning around without catching up, and the heavy rock brought by line he generally smashed on the poison knight. Bang! The strong poisonous knight slammed into the wall fiercely, a deafening sound rang, and the rubble rolled down like a shower and directly buried the hill. Awesome, so strong. The little spider Peter was stunned, and looked dumbfounded at this scene, completely different from what he thought in his head. However, Peter's mind became clearer and calmer, and the heavy damage he suffered was slowly healing his wounds with his strong resilience. The blood no longer overflowed and began to solidify, and the line of sight became clearer, looking deeply at Jin Muyan's back and Kazuko dancing in the air. I've seen it, yes, I have seen it. Peter frowned, and memories kept popping up in his mind. Even though his face looked different, he was really familiar with this way of fighting. Whip. No, it should be a long one. Kyoko. Kazuko. Ghoul. With a buzz in his head, Peter became even more bewildered, and murmured softly. Isn't this a manga? I read it wrong. But this seems to be a ghoul. Shumo. Faker. What kind of comics do you draw? Even people run out. Thinking of the end, Peter's face exploded like a ghost, staring at the back of the white-haired boy. No matter how dazed Peter was, the battle continued. Jin Muyan slowly stepped forward towards the pile of rocks, and said indifferently, "What's the matter?" "Nothing." "Wow, Jayahaha." The gravel pile was pushed away by the poison knight, and the dark body was raised again. The water-like appearance began to form muscles and looked scary. The tongue was spit out, and the blood bowl opened, and he shouted. "Boy, you angered me, your attacks are useless." Only then did Jin Muyan discover that the pierced hole in Dai's hands had long been closed, and the growth of the black matter closed again, and the moonlight's refraction had not changed at all. Regeneration. Ha ha ha, come on. The poisonous knight roared to the sky. His white eyes became narrower and narrower, and his snarled grin was cut to half of his head, and the upward arc was even more frightening. With lightning-like left and right bows, two black spider silks that were harder and more flexible than white were shot into the wall. Then they stuck to the two steel bars and pulled out, and threw them like a javelin. Woo! The powerful force carries the steel bars and makes a sharp whistling sound, piercing the air, like the black light passing by on a moonlit night. Cannot be hardwired. This was the thought in Jin Muyan's mind. Lin He was not Jahi, who had extremely high defensive capabilities, and the 4Hz smashed the ground heavily. With a bang, the surface slightly collapsed and cracked, and then with the force of the countershock, Jin Muyan pressed down slightly, kicking his feet on the ground, and bounced high like a cannonball. As soon as the figure left the ground, the sharp steel bars pierced the concrete floor like black thorns, and only halfway through it could it stop. Call out. Blindly defensive will undoubtedly lose. Jin Muyan jumped up like a cannonball and rushed forward in the air. In the blink of an eye, he came to Dai, and the four Kazutsu turned into beams of light and protruded a little red light. However, Dui had been prepared long ago, and roared deeply. I caught you. I saw the black material in one hand turned into a pitch-black shield like a stream of water, and the other hand suddenly grabbed it like a claw. Hey! The sharp Kazuko did not pierce as before, but slammed on the shield and made a harsh metal rubbing sound. At this time, the claws reached out like lightning and wanted to pull Kazuko directly. As long as he grasps these four annoying tentacles, Dui has the confidence to be able to directly tear it apart with his strength, and the final victory is already divided. Vision. Jin Muyan is a semi-ghoul. Once he accepts the ghoul status, his power speed will increase greatly. After the two geckos are eaten together, in addition to the stronger Hezi, they also have physical stamina. In a trance, Jin Muyan did not change his face, did not finish, but leaned up all by himself, with one foot just on his sturdy arm, and suddenly turned forward like a diver and rolled 360 degrees. Bang! When the sensitive Jin Muyan turned over the top of Dui's head, his slender feet were directly kicked back and kicked in his head. The back of the assaulted head was severely hit, and Dui staggered forward and fell to the ground. Jin Muyan landed and glided for a certain distance from the air. Xingyu, who had not succeeded in dismantling the move, had a solemn face and a dull pain in her feet. This feeling is completely different from when we met before. Jinmu knew that the monster in front of him was getting stronger. Dai's defensive ability rose straight, and he easily got up, shaking his neck, and grinning grinningly. It hurts, but it still doesn't work. You will die if you go on like this, kid. Dai's defensive ability rose straight, and he easily got up, shaking his neck, and grinning grinningly. It hurts, but it still doesn't work. You will die if you go on like this, kid. It is a thoughtful symbiosis of extraterrestrial organic life, appearing almost in liquid form. It needs to be combined with a host to survive, and can give the host powerful strength and abilities. Poison Yi doesn't have any extraordinary powers, fire breathing, ice spitting, thundering, etc., but it has superpower, astonishing speed, terrible patience, and because he is fluid, his hands can turn into a variety of cold weapons. I once possessed Spider-Man, so I also have the ability of Spider-Man, and Spider-Man can't beat him in a reasonable way. Ha, isn't it? As soon as the voice fell, Jin Muyin sprang out like a sharp arrow, but instead of rushing straight up, he rushed to the wall. When Dai saw this, he thought that Jin Muyin left the little spider and escaped through the window. How could he not chase after he was beaten? The black substance ran up like sticking to the wall, and yelled angrily, "Little devil, don't want to escape." Jin Muyin's speed became slower and slower. Hearing the sound of pedaling behind him, he suddenly twisted and jumped down. The four Linas gathered and hid. Jin Muyin seemed to commit suicide by jumping off the building. From Dai's point of view, he was waiting for death. He laughed wildly and greeted him with a heavy fist. Just in the middle of the church, large and small figures began to collide together. Just as time is temporary, when Jin Muyin touched his body with his dark fist, one line he suddenly slapped against the wall, and the whole person panned abruptly, and the three line he began to change and bind into a cone-shaped spur. Dai's grin directly solidified, only to feel that his eyes were empty, but Jin Muyin flashed sideways to the side of his fist. Red light suddenly appeared. Pouch! The huge hezi pierced through the body of the poison knight, firmly nailed to the wall, but it was not over yet. Since Jin Muyin knew that Dui had a strong regeneration ability, of course, he took advantage of the victory to pursue the attack, and another Kazuko directly swung it out. He didn't attack his arm, but used a trick to stab the poisonous knight, first of all, his narrow eyes. Laugh! The poison knight that was caught off guard had no time to react, and Kazuko pierced his eyes and burst out red blood and black substances. It is true that his fast running speed does not mean that his reaction speed is fast. It took less than 3 seconds from when the two of them were about to collide to when they were stabbed in their eyes. Coupled with Dai's reckless character, his overconfidence instilled all his strength into his hands, and Jin Muyin caught a flaw in his hands and launched an attack without any defense. You lose. Quote, Jin Muyin was hovering in the air because hezi nailed the wall, and the scale he had pierced his eyes suddenly pulled out, splashing scarlet blood again. Just as Jin Muyin pierced the other eye again, a sharp neigh good enough blew through the church like a crazy beast roar. A surging air wave suddenly burst from the mouth of the poison knight. Cece lifted the cone-shaped hezi, and slammed his fists against the wall, and the cracked wall collapsed. Upon seeing this, Jin Muyin hurriedly shrank hezi and threw himself aside, and at this moment, the poisonous knight violently bitten forward. A splash of blood flew in the air. Humph! Jin Muyin lowered his head and saw a huge wound on his arm as if it had been bitten by beast, rolling in the air and landing on the stairs. Although it looked scary with blood spurting from his arm, He had a strong recovery ability, and he soon slowly healed and began to grow and converge. Roar! I'm Poison Knight. Yu Muyin's pupils shrank to a point abruptly, and his face was green as he looked at the pitch-black monster in front of him like a mountain. I am Poisonous Knight. With the roar of the violent behemoth, the air wave rolled in all directions, dust rose in all directions, and a behemoth came to the ground. The burly body like a giant mountain, the pitch black revealing the horror of the abyss, the black fluid like silk thread extending from the body and flying in the air, the long curled tongue covered with disgusting night body is even more chilling. The flesh of the whole body swelled like a small hill again, and it looked like it was made of rock from a distance. The hands made Jin Muyin's face even more blue, and his huge palm was exactly the length of his entire person, which means that Jin Muyin could be firmly pinched in the palm of his hand with a grasp. In this way, the victory and defeat can be distinguished by strong physical strength. The long and narrow leucorrhea eyes that had been poked a hole before are now intact, even extending back to form a leucorrhea. The rows of fangs are even more exaggerated and scary. The rows of white teeth coupled with the big mouths of the giant beasts let Jin Muyin know deeply. As long as one bite, it is not a problem with the arm, at least half of the body will be torn. Boy, I want to thank you, it is because of your power that makes Thompson feel terrified, and I will completely control it. Dai's voice began to deteriorate, and the tone that was considered human before was now dull and low, and his hands directly touched the edge of the church bell tower as soon as he stretched his hands. The body type is too big. Jin Muyin has no idea why this monster has grown like this. In fact, Dai had already given the reason. The intense panic caused Dai's smooth invasion. The two combined with each other, turning this body into its puppet. At the same time, even though the two are in a symbiotic relationship, Dai must show his whole cards in the face of Jin Muyin's combos. That is to draw the vitality of the host back to feed the symbiote for rapid growth, to reach this body. In fact, Thompson, who is less than 20 years old in his body, is now in his 30s. Jinmuyan. At this time, even though Peter had not healed from his injuries, he was already capable of fighting. When he saw that Poison Knight had become so huge, he rushed over and asked tentatively. "Let me help you. Don't come here, you don't even have a battle uniform." Jin Muyan refused, staring at Dai. Poison Yoruichi was attached to the red envelope battle uniform at first. As Peter tore his clothes directly, the battle uniform disappeared, and the spider silk catapult inside was destroyed directly. The Spider-Man's combat power without spider silk is greatly reduced. Just as Peter was distressed that he was useless, Dai grinned and said, "Peter, you are a trash if you abandon me." Then suddenly a voice interjected in, appearing extremely lightly. "Abandoned. I also abandoned. Why don't you come back to find Mom, baby?" "Who is it?" Toxin Yoruichi listened, felt the great humiliation, turned his head and smelled the prestige to shout. "I saw a grotesque man wrapped tightly all over, wearing a red and black tights, sitting on the top stairs, with his feet dangling in the air, appearing to be leisurely and contented. 2 samurai swords were pinned behind him, and pistols were hung on the legs on both sides. Some bulging things were hidden inside and not exposed. Spider-Man. No, who are you?" There is no room for Douyi to doubt, because this suit is really like Spider-Man. Red black and red blue are particularly easy to confuse at first glance. "Me, just a mercenary asking for money. Hey, the fat little spider would hire me to chop off this big guy." The weird twisted and twisted to his feet, and the weird tone made people a little nervous. The weird twisted and twisted to his feet, and the weird tone made people a little nervous. When Peter heard it, the breeze blew for a while, and his feet could not help but shudder. When he lowered his head, he realized that he had torn his battle uniform and he was fattening his body. Otherwise, it is really a pervert running under the night. In fact, it looks like a pervert now. Peter bit the bullet and replied, "How much?" Secretly said, "The situation is a bit bad now. Jin Muyan doesn't seem to be stronger than the comics, but it's a bit difficult to get such a big monster, and he doesn't have the tools to fight, so a helper just happened to come. CIBG. Although it doesn't look good, it's better than nothing." The weirdo was overjoyed when he heard the words, and drew out 2 samurai swords and shouted, "For the sake of your and my couple's pretense, the strongest mercenary in the universe, Deadpool, only takes you 1 million. I'll start hacking." While walking on the top floor, Huohuoxin thought about where to go. At this time, Dai quit, and I am standing here on such a big mountain. Do you think you should cut it and cut it? Does it put me in your eyes? Go to hell. The poisonous knight violently thundered and swung out his paws. For a time, the wind was so loud that the air was cut through the buzzing, but a black paw patted it in the blink of an eye. Rumble. The huge claws smashed into the Deadpool's position, and the powerful destructive force penetrated the church bell tower. The rubble rolled down, and the smoke rose upstairs. Jin Muyan and Peter dodged again and again, but Dai felt that the anger was still there, and he kept pulling to the side. The building was torn open, and the light slowly came in. In the smoke and dust, Douyi retracted his paw contentedly, and said with a frantic grin, "What shit mercenary has turned into a pile of mud?" Seeing this scene, Jin Muyan and Peter were a little surprised. It really ended like this. Speak better than done. Peter was a little disappointed, thinking that he was a helper to be funny. "Wow, how heavy are you? Your paws stabbed my Xiaoju through. If my Vanessa knows, she definitely doesn't want to have with me." Deadpool climbed up from the edge of the ruins, and in the shocking eyes of everyone, his whole body was squashed by a heavy object and then began to expand to his original posture. The broken twisted bones began to grow and heal at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the splashing voice of Deadpool kept muttering. At the same time, it turned from slow to fast and turned into a red figure, and the 2 samurai swords exuded a cold light, and suddenly jumped down. "Baby, Mama Deadpool is going to stuff your paws under yourself." While fighting, he did not forget to speak with nerve-like language. 2 silver lights flashed in the night, like sudden passing lights. The air was rippling at an extremely fast speed, making a buzzing sound directly across Dai's neck. Pouch. The black matter suddenly spewed out like spring water, and it cut to 3 points into the wood, and the poison knight covered the wound in amazement. "It seems that there is no need for 1 million. Peter was overjoyed when he saw this, and there was still time to entangle 1 million. Jin Muyan's face was solemn, without letting go of a single detail. It's useless, it has a powerful regeneration ability. 10 minutes ago, Shumo put down the phone, raised his brows and looked at the system dial. Congratulations to the host, get Jinmu Research Fragment X2, Body Replacement Technique, Illusion, Hypnosis, Inoue Orihime Fragment X2, Telescope Technique. This is the 1 million lottery before Gwen called. It is less than before but more beautiful. Skill fragments have been replaced by the full version of skills and the time to collect fragments has been eliminated. Synthesizable characters detected. Jinmukin is in the process of synthesizing. 8 pieces of puzzle pieces flew out of the warehouse and collided with the 2 white pieces, quickly forming a character poster. The above pattern made Shumo stunned. What appeared in his sight were constantly flickering characters, all of them were Jinmuyan, with student appearances, preliminary ghoul, half-herald, and even a huge monster dragon, etc. At last it stopped, and the system prompt sounded character completed randomly and a card emitting white light floated to Shumo's hand. Jinmuyan, Bronze Tree period, 4 Kagko, can burst out the unconscious, centipede, Kazuko is temporarily half-hero, through the hebao eating or character fragments to evolve to the next period. Each manga owner Kakuzu changes from weak to strong, and of course his strength is different in different periods. Shumo clicks on the period column. The power of the next period is shown as a centipede, scale hyuk. Shumo considered that Peter seemed to be in trouble now, and just let Jinmuyan use his skills to see if he could adapt to Marvel Universe. Whether to keep the memory. Yes, Shumo's decisive Kaido, how could Jinmuyan grow up without previous experience? Even though this memory is painful, it also caused the appearance of Jinmu Xiao Angel. The card disappeared in the dazzling light, replaced by a white-haired boy, scanning the surroundings. Shumo. Jinmuyan said hello to his heart. This is the system's summons trust in Shumo from the very beginning, and it is completely flesh and blood. This is in line with Shumo's idea. If the people summoned are all cold, isn't it a robot? It's not interesting at all. Jinmu, do me a favor. Shumo didn't use the tone of command, but talked with each other respectfully. After learning about Peter's information and knowing the location of the probe through Skynet's intrusion, Jinmu jumped out the window and ran out without shirk. It seems we are going to move house, so we need a big villa to buy a special summoner to live in. Shumo touched his chin and looked at the fragments of characters in the warehouse. Many of them could be summoned, just a few. Obviously, it is impossible to live in the current house, especially the habitual 3 of Lorna and Giali will repel outsiders, and Shumo does not want to live together. In case of calling a fool, Shumo will give him up if he doesn't say anything at the beginning. So I live in a separate building, and the summons are separated. Anyway, I have money to buy it. Alice, can you monitor the situation at the scene? Shumo called Skynet Alice. No. They shouldn't have a probe in that place in the church, not to mention that satellite observations are not possible indoors. Alice went to see that Peppa Pig did not appear, but the voice came from the computer. Hey, I still have the telescope technique, a peeping artifact. Shumo glanced at a skill before remembering it, and took out a crystal ball from the warehouse. On the crystal ball placed on the table, Shumo moved his mind and traced and restored it based on the breath of golden wood. Everything in the church was shown on the glass. In this case, I can enlarge it and project it. Alice flashed out suddenly, scanning with interest. Can you do it? Shumo suspiciously. Telescope technique doesn't match science at all. After all, it will eventually form light and shadow, just use it. After all, it will eventually form light and shadow, just use it. Sure enough, under Alice's debugging, a realistic 3D projection appeared above the crystal ball, occupying a screen, which was completely enlarged, and the look inside was extremely similar. Live-action version. Shumo sat in a chair and watched the movie leisurely. In his opinion, Jinmu would not lose to die. The poisonous knight in the movie is really not much better. Shumo continued to draw the lottery while watching the projection. Now the wealth is rich, there are more than 11.3 million, and 2 million will come directly. Congratulations to the host, for acquiring the Ashura mode, Rukia skills, Shunpo, apology bug, sealed left arm. The apology bug, a very small, solid black technology like a cricket, as long as it is touched by it, it will reflect on the bad things that it has done and apologize. Shumo looked at a card, the left wrist of the seal, its function, collect all 5 parts to summon Exordia. Hey, the monster card that represents the invincible victory as soon as it appeared on the stage, will it be a god in this Marvel universe? Shumo took a deep breath, and at the same time thought of the strongest creation god of light among Yu-Gi-Oh! He understood that it was marked, God, how does it compare with Marvel's God? Being abused and beaten. After all, the universe is too deep. Just let's have a 5 million lottery draw. Shumo decisively said that 9.3 million points are only 4.3 million points in an instant. He has no plans to save a little. When the system will be upgraded in the future, there may be a mall that will not be enough. Congratulations to host, for getting the blue-eyed white dragon, Uzumaki Naruto Shard X1, Doraemon Shard X1, Mikasa Shard X2, Terminator T-800, Rukia Kuchiki's full set of Kido skills, Sealed Left Foot, Haruno Sakura's Hairpin, and Intimacy Heaven. Quote. Shumo's face suddenly stagnated, and the most valuable person in it was the blue-eyed white dragon. Yu Guang glanced at the immersive projection and frowned, but found that the situation on the scene was not good. When he focused on the lottery draw, the Knight of Poison suddenly became bigger. This is not how it was performed in the movie. Shumo hurriedly got up and realized that he had made a mistake. The Marvel movie may be in line with the plot, but the strength may behave like a comic. Even with this Deadpool, it is not optimistic. Shumo sorted out all the awards, drew out a card, walked to the balcony, and then threw it fiercely. The card spun quickly, and a huge body appeared in the dazzling white light. Aerospace carrier. Alert. Alarm. There is a huge thermal response over Manhattan. At this time, the alarm sounded suddenly, and the agents acted immediately and touched the screen to control them. Quickly put the target on the big screen. How big is it? Nick Fury put his hands on the podium and quickly ordered. Director, the target speed is too fast to capture the appearance, only a vague shadow, and hundreds of meters of body length data. Commander Hill quickly reported the situation. There are thick dark clouds in the ultra-clear picture. Even if the moonlight is combined with the detection of low Earth orbit satellites, only extremely huge shadows can be seen. Calculate the target's destination immediately, and S.H.I.E.L.D. must arrive in time. Nick Fury shouted eagerly, "What the hell is this? Is it another alien creature?" Nick Fury thinks that his face is white, but there is no reason for it. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.